my first question is about the setting for
Okay.
the Joy Luck Club. So I was wondering, what did you think was important, and what was like the significance behind America versus China?
So like about the setting, right? I think it's really important because it shows like the cultural differences between their mothers and their daughters. So like it's like sometimes the mothers they don't get American culture, but then the daughters they don't understand Chinese culture.
Yeah, I thought that was also very similar because I thought of
Mm-hmm.
America. I thought it was like, oh, here's the place of opportunity, and here's the place
Mm-hmm.
where anything is possible. Like one of the mothers was talking about how she thought that now that her daughter was here, now that anything was possible, and now she could go so much farther than what her mother could. And I want to
Yeah.
lead into in China, we saw a difference between rural and urban areas, and what do you think the significance was behind that?
I haven't really thought of that actually. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was thinking the rural areas are like a lot more traditional because a lot of the rural settings were happening in China, and I was thinking that when the mothers, when they're in China and they're in these rural environments, they have to follow the traditions a lot more. And like when I think it was on May, when
Mm-hmm.
she was living in the farming area and she had to leave her old family and live with the new family, who was a
Yeah.
lot more about tradition, and like she was married to the other man. And they had the candle to, signify stuff. That's all very traditional. While in the urban areas, like where Waverly lived, we see
Mm-hmm.
them and they're getting married in like the American way. All right.
Actually,
So,
oh yeah, go ahead.
in terms of characters, I'd like to
Mm.
start off with the daughters,
Okay.
Jing Mei and well, actually, I'm just gonna put them actually in couples. So Jing Mei and Su Yuan Wu. What do you think the dynamic was there?
Jing Mei and her mom.
Yeah, and her mom.
Um, well, I think like Jing Mei always feels like she's not good enough for her mother. Like she always feels like she's disappointing her mother because I think in one of the chapters like her mom always wanted her to become a prodigy like her friend Waverly, but like Jing Mei never fulfilled her requirements. So I feel like Jing Mei always felt that she was disappointing her mother, but in reality, like her mom actually really loved her. It's just like a different way of expressing it.
Hmm. Thank you. Yes. Um, I was thinking for Jingmei and her mother, I thought it was a little more specific in terms of like Jingmei. I thought that she was always thinking of herself as, oh, like what you said, you can only be what you can be, and there's no point in even trying to go farther than that. And
Mhm.
I thought it was really characterizing, especially during the last chapters when she goes to China with her father Canning,
Mhm.
and what you see is that she never really felt like she knew her mother because her mother was always being disappointed in her. So I feel like her mother never really thought that she needed to explain herself to her daughter. But then at the end, Jingmei, she actually sees that, oh, maybe she was more like her mother than she thought she was before, and maybe she can
Yeah.
give her mother's experience to her twin sisters in China.
Yeah, I actually think like Jing Mei's mom wanted to tell her about it. Like Jing Mei's mom wanted to tell her about her past. But like I think it's because of the cultural differences that made it hard for her mom to tell her about like her own past. And I think like in the beginning, like her mom actually tried to tell her stories about like where she came from and like how she left her other daughters behind. But like I think Jing Mei was saying how her mom like always changed the story every time like it was being told.
Hmm.
So, can you relate to the way that Jing Mei feels when her mom wants her to become a prodigy, but Jing Mei knows that she's just an ordinary girl? Like, can you relate to that feeling?
Yeah, I was thinking about how I might relate to the dynamics between the daughters and the mothers. And I thought before that maybe I might find somebody that I feel like I might relate to,
Hmm.
but I feel like it's kind of like the opposite for me. I kind of feel like for Jing Mei and her mother, for me, between myself and my parents, I don't know, I don't feel like they're criticizing me. I feel like they are actually extremely supportive. So I feel like it's hard for me to relate to the daughter and the mother, but I can see how in an opposite setting how it might be detrimental, and it might like how Jing Mei, she was feeling very sad about her life and about how critical her mother was always, like, all the time, while I haven't had much of that experience myself. I'm gonna ask, so once again, what do you think is the dynamic between Waverly?
And I think like the relationship between Waverly and her mom is like completely opposite of that between Jingmei and her mom. And it's kind of ironic how like Waverly and Jingmei are really close friends despite like their differences.
Yeah.
So like going back to Waverly's mother, like I was always really confused about her character. So obviously like Waverly's mother was really proud of her daughter for chess and she would always brag to other people about Waverly, but like Waverly was embarrassed because her mother always like bragged about her and Waverly yelled at her mom and Waverly's mom becomes like really offended by this. So do you think she ever considered how Waverly felt?
No, I don't think she was considering how Waverly felt. I think it's because she, once again, she saw her as like a trophy and as like, oh, here is one of my achievements in life is my child. But she doesn't see her child as being someone she needs to connect with. She sees it as, oh, here's something I have done in my life, and here is something I can show other people. Like, look where I've gotten. Kind of in the same way she has somewhat Waverly's attitude, where like we see Waverly in the connection and the relationship between Waverly and Jing Mei is that Waverly is always talking about how, oh, I look look how great I am, and like look how I'm doing something great, and oh, Jing Mei, you're working in this firm or whatever, and you
Yeah, yeah.
are not, look, you haven't come and risen to where I've been. And I feel like Lin Do-jong and Waverly, that's kind of the same type of relationship with Waverly's mother. She's always thinking that, oh, you're just an achievement. You're just something I can show other people where I've gotten, and that's one of the reasons why Waverly gets upset is because that's how Lindo is portraying Waverly to everyone else she meets, like when she's at the market.
Mhm.
If we move on to the next character, that would be Rose and her mother, Anmei. So
Okay.
I'm trying to think of Rose and Anmei, and I'm trying to think. So what was their relationship? Kind of the same way, like Jing Mei and Su Yan and Waverly and Lindo. What do you think there was the relationship between Rose and Anmei? Was it more friendly? Was it more hostile?
Um, I don't think the book really talks about their relationship as much as they talk about like Jingmei and her mom. I think the book mainly talked about like Rose and her relationship to her husband.
Hmm.
Like I don't really.
You saw Ted, like when Ted is at the, I think it's Ted that's at the dinner.
Um,
Some notes, and what I see is that Ted, he was he was the one who was making many of the decisions in the relationship.
hold
Doctor?
Lena. So Lena and Harold they split everything evenly between each other.
Uh-huh.
They already had the divorce papers,
Hmm.
and Rose decides that she wanted to keep the house to herself.
Oh yeah, she needed to learn to assert herself because like on May, she just kind
Yeah,
of on May shows how like in her flashbacks how she was way too passive, and then she doesn't want Rose to be the same way.
I was pretty passive, but like I know for sure Lena was a really passive person,
Hmm.
and like she and her husband always shared everything, but she never said anything about it, even though it was unfair to her.
Yeah, I think Rose was
But
the
yeah.
one. Well, I think Rose was the one where when she talked to Aunt May and Aunt May told her
Uh-huh.
story. That's when Rose went and talked to Ted and asked for, oh, I want the house and you can go see my lawyer and I'm not gonna just let things happen anymore. All right, so between Lena and Ying Ying, now since we've had some of our confusion between the different different characters in this book. Hopefully, we can try to clarify with Ying Ying and Lena St. Clair. So, once again, for the relationship between Lena and St. Clair and kind of their respective flashbacks, what do
Hmm.
you see as what is happening between them? And what do you see, like, what is Lena learning from her mother? Because that's usually a common theme in this book is to learn from your mother and to learn from other people's
Yeah.
past mistakes.
So I think one of the biggest lessons that Lena learns is to not be so passive and to take like more control over her life. Um, there was this part, if you have this book, it's on page one. It's when like uh there was the vase on top of like the wobbly table and then her mom knocks it over and then
Hmm.
Lena comes into the room and she says, "Oh yeah, I always knew that the vase was gonna fall off." And then her mom asks her, "Well, then why didn't you stop it?" So then her mom is like teaching her to have more
Hmm.
control over her life and not just like passively let her relationship with Harold fall apart.
But yeah, you're right. It's really just the Lena being passive once again, kind of like Rose being passive. You're right. That's a common attribute between the two daughters. And then Ying Ying, she teaches Lena, and like what you said, she actually goes and starts to take action in her life, and not make the same mistakes that Ying Ying made when she was younger. Yeah, I was going to see other characters being Rich Shields and
Uh,
Shoshana, and
oh, oh,
those are both related to the same character, Waverly, because
yeah,
Rich Shields is the second or going to be husband of Waverly,
yeah,
isn't that right?
yeah,
Okay, so what I saw with Rich Shields and Waverly is that Rich Shields is kind of like Waverly's object in order to prove to her mother, Lindo, that, oh, look, I can actually make decisions on myself, decisions by myself, and I don't care about your criticisms. But then I see him as also being the truth that Lindo is actually very smart and she wants the best for Waverly, and that's the reason why she's criticizing
yeah,
everything he does. And like when he's at the dinner and he's messing up everything, like he mispronounces the name
yeah,
Lindo and
yeah.
Tim. All right. So I saw Rich Shields as being one of the objects for Waverly and her mother communicating, because he's one of the reasons that they actually start communicating, and that Waverly starts bringing up how she wants to be able to make her own decisions and not have her mom completely criticize everything she does. So I feel like Rich Shields. I feel like he is the not foil, but he is like the communication between them.
What about Shoshana?
So for Shoshana, I thought that was with Waverly. That's Waverly's child. So I saw the connection between Shoshana and Waverly being that it shows how different Waverly and Lindo are when it comes to their daughters, because the way that Lindo treats Waverly as, oh, you're just a prize and you're like an achievement that I've come across, I feel like Waverly and Shoshana, it's a lot more mutual, and
Yeah.
Waverly just loves Shoshana for being her and isn't highly critical of Shoshana, and she just loves her for being her daughter and for being being herself. And I thought that kind of it shows like the contrast between the new way of the Chinese teaching her daughter. So like Lindo Zhang, she has Chinese culture and she's interacting with her daughter in that respect. And then Waverly, now Waverly is in America, and it's just kind of like a different different setting.
I guess we can look at the connections. So, did you connect this novel to like any other books or stories that you have read before?
I did. In terms of world connections, I connected it with actually two books, because I connected it with A Tale of Two Cities and The Lord of the Flies. And for A Tale of
Hmm.
Two Cities, I thought that Su Yuan, she was actually kind of similar to Dr. Manette, because for a
Hmm.
long time she was disconnected from her daughters, her twins in China, and it was kind of in a similar way that Dr. Manette, he was disconnected from his daughter for that long period of time, and eventually when they reconnected, they had to explain themselves, and Su Yuan, she couldn't directly reconnect, but through her daughter Jing Mei, she was able to explain herself to her twin daughters, while Dr. Met, he was actually able to do it in person.
Hmm. What about Lord of the Flies?
So for Lord of the Flies, I thought that Lindo Zhang, I thought she was kind of similar to Piggy because they're both really critical people. Because throughout Lord of the Flies, we see Piggy criticizing the actions of all the people on the island, and
Mm-hmm.
then with Lindo Jong, we see her consistently criticizing Waverly and all the things that she could do better. And Piggy is the same way. He sees that, oh, people are they're too savage, they're too scary, they're too really anything. And then Lindo, she sees her daughter and she says, "Oh, you need to practice more. Your husband has all these problems. He's too this, too that, that type of thing." And I
Yeah.
thought that was a similarity between them.
Yeah. I drew a connection between this novel and the novel October Sky, which was the ORB that I did for first quarter. So October Sky is a novel about like an amateur scientist. Like he's a young boy, but he wants to build rockets, but like he doesn't know how to, so like he kind of figures it all out by himself. And eventually he made it to the National Science Fair. And I drew a connection between him and Waverly. How like Waverly was an amateur at chess and like she didn't really know how to play, but like she figured it out herself by like practicing with like the old men in the park, and eventually like
Hmm.
she became like a national chess champion.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing of like an underdog moving up through life because
Yeah.
Waverly, she saw herself as, oh, maybe I'm not that good at anything, but then, yeah, she saw the chess pieces from her brothers, and her brothers just neglected it and said, oh, now we're losing to our
Mhm.
little sister. Oh, I'm just gonna quit. But Waverly, she saw it and she said, oh, here's something that I can work on and work towards being better at.
Mhm.
All right. Um, so I was going to ask you, in terms of writing style, why do you think that, from a perspective of view, what I got from the book was that it was consistently it was mostly flashbacks. So it was kind of a combination third person and first person, because some of it was first person with the flashbacks and the mothers and the daughters explaining their previous past events,
Uh-huh.
and then some of it was third person in those same type of flashbacks and in the prologues between the parts, not the chapters.
Is
So my question is, why do you think she decided to use a different perspective for the prologues? For the prologues.
I think prologues are just um like lessons to take from like more chapters to follow. So like, well, not like lessons, but how do I say this? Like the prologue kind of like gives a preview to like what the next four chapters will be about. So
Hmm.
like it's like a generalization of like the next four chapters.
Yeah, so by a lesson, you think that maybe they're trying to connect it more to the lessons of like the lessons you see in older style books, where like folk tales and that type of thing. Most of those were told from a third person perspective.
Yeah, like those kind of lessons.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, I see how that works with the life lessons, and
Mm-hmm.
many life lessons were taught in older literature from a third person
Yeah.
perspective. All right, and then kind of a little more on the prologues in terms of writing style is we see the metaphors, and one
Okay.
of the big metaphors is the swan at the beginning of the book. I think it's the
Yeah.
first prologue, and I was wondering, what do you think the swan means?
Okay, so I actually said that the swan was a symbol of hope and determination
Hmm.
because like the swan was originally a duck and like the duck was doomed to be eaten by people, but like it refused to accept its fate and it was determined to become a goose by stretching its neck, and because of its determination it became something that was even better than a goose, and
Hmm.
it eventually turned into a swan. So I guess like that represents how you shouldn't be passive about like your life, and it gives the lesson that like you have the power to change who you are. So that's like an important lesson that I think Ying Ying teaches Lena.
Hmm. Yeah, I had a similar view of it, but I also had a little
Hmm.
bit different in that I thought that yes, it symbolized what they were teaching their daughters and what Ying Ying was teaching Lena, but
Mm-hmm.
I saw it as it's really just a general metaphor for their knowledge, for each of the
Uh-huh.
mother's knowledge, and how they got knowledge in China and they grew up in China and they gained skills and lessons in China. And then when they came to America, they weren't able to directly pass that on to their children because when they went to when they went to America and had to pass through like the immigration system, like when while they were talking about the swan metaphor, they were talking about how they went to the immigration system. The lady went to the immigration system and they took her swan away from her, and all she had was a feather. So I thought that was they're taking away their ability to pass on their Chinese culture to their children because now like they're marrying some of them at least marrying uh, like American citizens, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then that one final feather that they keep is their flashback, is their lesson that they pass on to their um, daughters once they're in America. So I thought that was
Yeah.
kind of what it symbolized.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
then
I can see that.
and then another metaphor I saw in it was the candle that symbolized the
Yeah.
relationship between I can't remember who
Wait,
and
I said
the
was
not so nice spoiled
what's
brat.
yeah, I said that was the candle was a symbol instead of a metaphor.
Oh yes, Hong. I don't really know how to
Oh, it was
pronounce it. Hong.
Tianyu.
Yeah,
Lindo and
Tianyu.
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 Hmm.
Hong Tianyu. So, what do you think that metaphor was teaching the reader?
Oh, okay. So I said the candle symbolized passivity and like servitude,
Hmm.
and the fact that Lindo like takes control of her own life and like she blows out the candle, that symbolized like her like changing her own destiny. So like that ties back into like
Hmm.
the idea of not being passive to like what's going on in your life and like taking control of your destiny.
Yeah, going and you're right. Stepping away from the passive attitude and going and actually making change.
Hmm.
All right. Um, so we can move on to the metaphor that is in the name of the book, which is the Joy Luck Club. And we learn about the Joy Luck Club and its origins in chapter 1.
Hmm.
So what do you think the Joy Luck Club is metaphorically, and what do you think it's teaching the rest of the daughters after we hear about the Joy Luck Club and after we hear about all their stories?
I never really thought of that.
Hmm.
I guess the Joy Luck Club is just like a way, it's like a sanctuary for like
Hmm.
all of these mothers who are going through like their own tough times to like come together and to like celebrate as a way to like escape from all this sadness and everything that's happened in their lives.
Exactly. I wholeheartedly agree. When I was reading chapter 1 and I was reading about the Joy Luck Club, I saw it as a way for like this is their way of coping with the problems in their life. This is their way of trying to forget about that for a while and trying to
Hmm.
add some add some celebration into their life and add some
Yeah.
happiness where maybe there might have not been a whole lot. Just wanted to make a note of the recurring events in that we saw the Japanese War. We saw that
Hmm.
taking place. I remember two specific points where it made a big change in the book, or it had some effects in the book, which was in the first chapter. It is kind of the reason why the Joy Luck Club exists. It was the catalyst to form the Joy Luck Club because
Hmm.
the Japanese War was what was causing all these people to be sad, and it gave Suyeon the idea that, oh, let's try to escape from this sadness. I'm going to form the Joy Luck Club. I'm going to invite some
Yeah.
people, and we're going to try to forget about it for a while. And
Hmm.
then later, when we see Lindo Zhang, and she's getting married to Hong Tian Yu, and what we see is her not real mother. Well, I'm just gonna say Huang Tianyu, his mother, is setting
Okay.
up the marriage, and then
Yeah.
invites all these people and wants it to be such a big event, and wants it to be something great. Yet the Japanese War prevents that from happening because there's a lightning storm, and then everyone feels like they can't go, and everyone is scared to arrive, which leads it to be a really small gathering, just showing, I mean, to me, it's showing how little importance the marriage was in terms of like how valid it was, because uh,
Mm-hmm.
Lindo, she was not actually, it wasn't her choice to have the marriage, and she wasn't, pro for the marriage. And then the Japanese war causing the very small amount of people to show up to witness the marriage, I think just kind of
Mm-hmm.
enhances the illegitimacy. All right. So the one of the first themes I saw was the possibilities of a new world, and really connecting that with America. It seems like almost all of the
Mm-hmm.
mothers, they came to America in order to escape something, in order to
Mm-hmm.
um, provide a better setting for their daughters to grow up in. And I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure it's prologue two or part one, sorry, part two, chapter five, which is in that beginning we see one of the mothers. She's talking about all the new possibilities that, oh, in the new world you can be anything. You can be anything you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the specific quote there is, you could be anything you wanted to be. You could open a restaurant, you could work for the government, you could buy a house, you could become rich, you could become instantly famous. And that's on page 132. So what I saw there was, that is what America is kind of showing, like what America is in this book, is it's this new place for people to start again with their daughters. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, maybe my life wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but now I can give you the life that I think you should have. I think you deserve.
One of the themes that like I chose was the passivity part. So like the theme that like we shouldn't be passive to things that are tearing us apart on the inside, and
Hmm.
instead we should take actions to prevent bad things from happening.
Hmm.
Like that was one of the major themes that I found in this novel.
Yeah, we definitely saw that with Ying Ying, Sinclair, Lena,
Hmm.
and they were the two major people who were passive, and then a little bit more with An Mei and Rose.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Um, the other theme I found was, we saw the importance of familial bonds between the mothers and the
Hmm.
daughters, because when uh, when Jing Mei says at the mahjong table, that she doesn't know her mother well enough. When they say, "Oh, go see your
Hmm.
twin sisters in China," and Jing Mei acts like, "Oh, well, actually, I don't really know enough. Like, maybe I wouldn't be the best person to talk to them about her mother." And then we see the rest of the mothers, they're worried because they think, "Oh my gosh, maybe our daughters, they don't know enough either. Like, they don't know
Hmm.
enough about our past." And it kind of leads for them to go and talk to their daughters and give them their input and teach them their lessons.
Yeah.
So yeah, more of a
Um,
general theme, which was the importance of familial bonds.
yeah.
Um, Anything else I haven't thought of?
No, I think that's all I have to say.